In the heart of northern Mexico, far from major cities, deep inside the Chihuahuan desert, there is a place surrounded by rumors, fear, and fascination. It is known as the Mexican Silent Zone, a stretch of barren land where, according to legend, radios stop working, compasses spin, strange lights appear in the sky, and people vanish into stories they can never fully explain. Some call it Mexico's Bermuda Triangle. Others say it is a hotspot for extraterrestrial activity. And some believe the truth is even stranger than the myths. Because unlike many mystery locations, the Silent Zone is real. It exists. You can find it on a map. And for decades, it has attracted scientists, journalists, treasure hunters, UFO believers, and travelers, all hoping to uncover what is really happening in that lonely patch of desert. But the deeper you dig into the story, the harder it becomes to separate fact from fiction. So what exactly is the Mexican Silent Zone? Why did people begin believing it was cursed, magnetic, or even not entirely of this world? And is there actually anything unusual happening out there in the desert? This is the mystery of the Mexican Silent Zone. The Silent Zone is located in the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve in the state of Durango, near the borders of Chihuahua and Coahuila. It is part of a vast desert region filled with dry plains, volcanic rock, cactus, and almost endless emptiness. During the day, the heat can be brutal. At night, the temperature drops, and the desert becomes eerily silent. There are few roads, few landmarks, and very few people. It is exactly the kind of place where myths grow easily. If you were standing out there alone, surrounded by open desert and distant mountains, it would not take much to start feeling that something was off. The legend says that normal radio signals do not work inside the zone, that compasses fail, that electronic devices behave strangely, that meteors fall there more often than anywhere else, and that strange beings have been seen wandering the desert, sometimes described as tall, pale, and human-looking, but not quite human. These stories turned the Silent Zone into one of Mexico's most famous unexplained places. But the roots of the mystery go back much further than internet rumors and UFO documentaries. One of the earliest stories often connected to the Silent Zone dates back to the 1930s. According to the tale, a pilot named Francisco Sarabia flew over the region and reported odd disruptions in his radio transmissions. In some versions of the story, the instruments on his aircraft behaved unpredictably as he passed over the desert. This is often presented as one of the first signs that the area had unusual electromagnetic properties. But like many pieces of the Silent Zone legend, the details are difficult to verify. The story has been repeated countless times, but solid documentation is hard to pin down. And that is a pattern that repeats over and over with this mystery. The most famous event connected to the Silent Zone happened decades later, in 1970. That year, the United States launched an Athena rocket from a missile range in Utah. Something went wrong. The rocket veered off course. Instead of continuing on its intended path, it traveled hundreds of miles south and crashed in the Mexican desert, near the area now associated with the Silent Zone. That one event changed everything. Because when a US missile suddenly falls out of the sky and lands in a remote desert already surrounded by strange local stories, people start paying attention. American recovery teams quickly moved in to retrieve the debris. The operation was large, expensive, and highly visible. Heavy equipment was brought into the area. Roads were improved. Scientists and military personnel examined the site, and almost immediately rumors started to spread. Why had the rocket gone off course? Was it simple mechanical failure? Or had something in that desert interfered with it? For believers, this was not just an accident. It was proof. Proof that something about the Silent Zone affected guidance systems, communications, and electronics. And once that idea took hold, the legend exploded. People began linking older stories to the rocket incident. Radio failures, compass problems, meteorite falls, UFO sightings, disappearances. It all began blending into one larger myth, a place where the normal rules no longer applied. Then came the lights. Many locals and visitors claimed to see strange glowing objects moving across the night sky. Some described them as hovering. Others said they moved with impossible speed, then vanished without a sound. There were reports of balls of light near the ground, flashes in the distance, and objects that seemed to watch from above. Of course, deserts are perfect environments for strange sightings. The sky is wide open, visibility is high, distances are deceptive. Heat distortion can play tricks on the eyes, and once a place has a reputation for mystery, every unusual light becomes evidence. Still, the stories kept coming. Some of the strangest accounts involve mysterious humanoid figures. In several retellings, travelers lost in the desert claimed they encountered tall, blonde strangers who appeared suddenly, spoke politely, and then disappeared just as quickly. In one version of the story, a family stranded in a storm said they were helped by unusual men who seemed to know exactly where to go, even though they themselves came out of nowhere. After helping, they vanished into the desert. These figures are sometimes described almost like angels, sometimes like extraterrestrials, sometimes like interdimensional beings, and sometimes like nothing more than a campfire story that grew larger with every retelling. But those stories are part of why the silent zone still fascinates people today. It is not just about broken radios or lost signals. It is about the feeling that the place itself is watching, that something intelligent might be hidden behind the silence. Then there are the meteorites. This part of the mystery is especially interesting because it has a basis in reality. The region around the silent zone has seen notable meteorite activity. Fragments have fallen there over time, and the desert landscape has preserved evidence of impacts. To believers, this supports the idea that the zone somehow attracts objects from space, as if it were a cosmic magnet, a point where the Earth and the unknown intersect. That theory sounds dramatic, but science offers a simpler explanation. Meteorites fall all over the planet. Some areas preserve them better. Dry desert environments are ideal for finding them because the terrain makes unusual rocks stand out, and low moisture slows down weathering. In other words, the silent zone may not necessarily attract more meteorites. It may simply make them easier to notice. That explanation is less exciting, but often the real world works that way. Still, scientific explanations have not stopped the legend from growing. In fact, science itself helped keep the story alive. Researchers were drawn to the region because of its unusual ecology. The Mapimi area is home to rare plants and animals adapted to extreme desert conditions. Its isolation made it valuable for field study. And once scientists began spending time there, their presence fed public interest even more. To outsiders, labs and researchers in a place already known for UFO rumors only made the mystery feel more credible. Some people assumed the government was studying hidden phenomena. Others thought scientists were quietly confirming magnetic anomalies. The truth, as usual, was less dramatic. Most scientific work in the area focused on biology, geology, and desert ecosystems. That did not stop speculation. Because the silent zone sits in a perfect space between truth and legend. It is remote enough to feel secret, real enough to seem believable, and strange enough to keep people asking questions. One of the central claims about the zone is that radio signals cannot pass through it. That is where the name silent zone comes from. But does that actually happen? The answer is complicated. There is little hard evidence that the entire area blocks radio communications in any mysterious way. In fact, many people who have visited the region have used radios, GPS devices, and recording equipment without major problems. Some communication issues in the desert can be explained by ordinary factors: rugged terrain, distance from infrastructure, atmospheric conditions, equipment quality, and the simple reality that remote deserts are not ideal places for clear signal transmission. That may sound disappointing if you want the legend to be true, but it also reveals something important. Mysteries do not always begin with lies. Sometimes they begin with misunderstandings. A dropped signal becomes an anomaly. Anomaly becomes a rumor becomes a headline, and a headline becomes a legend that lasts for generations. The same is true for compasses. Many stories claim that compasses spin wildly in the silent zone, that magnetic fields are distorted there, that navigation becomes unreliable. Yet scientific studies have not confirmed any extraordinary magnetic effect across the region. There may be localized mineral deposits or environmental factors that affect instruments in small ways. But there is no solid proof of a giant magnetic dead zone swallowing up technology. And still the stories survive. Why? Because people are drawn to places that feel incomplete. Places where the map seems to leave room for the impossible. The silent zone is one of those places. It sits at the crossroads of science, folklore, tourism, and belief. For some, it is just a desert with a good story. For others, it is one of the few places left in the modern world where the unknown still feels close. And to be fair, there is something undeniably strange about it. Not necessarily because of alien technology or warped magnetic fields, but because of atmosphere. Isolation changes perception. Silence changes perception. When there is no city noise, no crowd, no constant stream of human activity, your mind starts filling in the gaps. Every distant light matters. Every strange rock looks deliberate. Every shadow feels like it might move. That kind of environment is fertile ground for mystery. And maybe that is part of the real answer. Maybe the silent zone does not bend reality. Maybe it bends people. Maybe it takes the ordinary and makes it feel charged with meaning. A broken radio in a city is an inconvenience. A broken radio in a legendary desert becomes evidence. A light in the sky near an airport is forgettable. A light in the sky above the silent zone becomes a UFO. That does not mean every story is false. It means the setting itself amplifies belief. But even if the science does not support the most dramatic claims, the silent zone remains a fascinating place. Because legends matter. They tell us how people make sense of uncertainty. They show how mystery forms. And they remind us that sometimes a place becomes powerful not because of what is proven there, but because of what people are willing to imagine there. In many ways, the Mexican silent zone is a perfect modern myth. It is military intrigue, a crashed rocket, remote desert geography, meteors from space, stories of strange beings, broken signals, missing explanations, and just enough truth to keep the whole thing alive. That is why it still appears in books, documentaries, and late-night conversations. It offers the possibility that somewhere out there, hidden in plain sight, the world is still stranger than we think. So is the Mexican silent zone truly paranormal? Probably not in the way the wildest stories claim. There is no strong evidence that it is a place where physics breaks down. No confirmed alien base. No proven electromagnetic wall. No scientific finding that turns the desert into a portal of the unknown. But dismissing it entirely would also miss the point. Because mystery is not always about proving supernatural forces. Sometimes mystery is about understanding why certain stories refuse to die. Why one stretch of desert became a magnet for fear, wonder, and speculation. Why people still travel there hoping to feel something unusual. And why silence itself can be so unsettling. In the end, the Mexican silent zone may not be a place where signals disappear. It may be a place where certainty disappears, a place where rumor and reality blur together under the desert sun. And maybe that is more powerful than any simple explanation. Because as long as people keep seeing lights in the sky, hearing stories from locals, and standing alone in that vast empty landscape, the legend will continue. The desert will stay quiet, and the questions will stay loud. If you enjoyed strange unsolved mysteries, check out the next video on your screen.